Ahoy, matey! Welcome back to the Dumb Book Club. I'm Chandler.
And I'm Hayden.
Today we're going to be talking about one of my favorite romance novels, It Happened One Summer by Tessa Bailey. We are overjoyed to be talking about this book with you today.
Are we?
I'm overjoyed. And I know Hayden is too, because he said, and I quote, "This is definitely the best of the books that you've made me read." And so I think we're off to a promising start.
The bar wasn't set super high, to be fair.
Are you saying that I haven't been introducing you to quality literature?
I'm still trying to find out what quality means to you.
How would you rate this book? What are your initial, thoughts, I suppose? What did you expect going into this, and how did it live up to those expectations?
I'm never really expecting a whole lot. Can't say that, and not in a good or a bad way, right?
Okay. You like to go in with an open mind?
Yes, exactly. This one, I had slightly higher hopes for than the other ones, only because you had already mentioned to me that you liked it the most. You know, it was one of your favorites. You had also told me that you anticipated it, that I would like it more than the other books that you've forced me to read. That being said,
there's always that being said.
As soon as I started reading it, I was like, oh no. Chapter 1 was a big oh no moment for me. I was like, I know that this is the Dumb Bitch Book Club, but man, you're really starting it out with one of the dumbest bitches that there has been so far, right? Almost a self-proclaimed bimbo.
But I like that she's upfront about it. I would say, to your credit, and I guess to the book's credit, maybe, I requested an advanced reader copy of this book right before it came out, and I honestly didn't know what to expect because I had really bad luck with the first book that I ever read by Tessa Bailey. I think I put it on one of my worst books of the year list the year it came out, and I can't remember for the life of me if the third book in that series, I think it's the Fix Her Up series, I don't know, whatever the series is with the first book is Fix Her Up. I didn't like that book. I liked the third book, and I can't remember for the life of me if I read that one before requesting this or not. I just know that going into this, I didn't really know what to expect, and when I first started reading, I was like, oh fuck. This could go one of two ways. I could really love this and grow to enjoy Piper as a heroine, or I could just hate her as a heroine and hate the whole book. And thankfully, it obviously turned out being favorable, since this is one of my favorite romances of all time, but Piper is definitely someone that I can understand why other people don't like and don't connect with. Yeah, the first couple of chapters, even as I started warming to her, I could definitely I could still feel a little bit of ick.
She is definitely your brand of dumb bitch.
In what way?
I would just say that I could see you relating to her the most. You like nice things.
Big tits and a big heart.
As I was saying, I came into this having a little bit higher expectations than most just because of everything that you had said to me. I start chapter 1, immediately it drops, it just plummets, right? I'm like, I'm gonna hate this.
I thought I had warned you going into this. No, I didn't.
You did not warn me at all. And then by the end, it was back up. Was my favorite of the dbbc books that we've read so far.
And that's what I like to hear. Also, I didn't even point it out, but in the title of this video, it says husband. So this is your first DBB as a husband. How are you feeling about it? Initiated into the club.
I feel locked and loaded. I'm stuck here now.
He is. So there's going to be many more of these to come. He's hyped for it. He's ready. With the way that you were able to get through this book in 3 days, I feel like we need to just sign him up for one of these a month.
Well, I mean, now that I'm Mr. Dumb Bitch.
Does that...
Yes.
I don't feel like I really need to explain very much about how I'm feeling about this book and my overall general thoughts, since we're going to get into it, and also I've read this book on my channel before. This is a 5-star read for me.
5 stars?
I love this book. I love everything that it stands for. There are so many memorable moments in this book that I often forget about. This is only my second time reading it. This is my first reread of it, and it was just as delightful the second time around. There were just so many little things that I wrote down in my notes. I was like, here's some things I like, and all of the things I like are about just how Brendan treats Piper and how much he spoils her, and we'll get into that in a little bit. But yes, this is a 5-star read for me. This is one of my all-time favorite romances. I made a video last year on my birthday of my all-time favorite romances. Punk 57 is one of them. He knows this because he had to read this one already, or he had to read that one already. Getting the second one.
Oh, man.
Maybe we'll have him read Birthday Girl next. Who knows?
Birthday Girl, another one of your faves?
It is. It is indeed one of my faves.
It's unrelated, but I just want to say this new camera setup I feel like is doing wonders for me. Just being able to sit all the way up straight, have nice posture. This feels great.
That makes one of us. I just didn't want my hairy legs in the frame, to be honest.
Anytime that we film on a couch or in bed or something like that, yeah.
Now that we've discussed our first thoughts and first opinions of this book, let's go ahead and get into the juicy plot and talk about our overall feelings and thoughts on this book. I don't know how long this is going to be, given that Hayden says he doesn't have any actual notes prepared, and he's he's a notes kind of guy, but I did prepare notes, so I've got a lot to say. Let's get into it. We open up this book in the first part that Hayden didn't totally love. We have Piper. She is kind of a party girl. She is having a wild time. She gets dumped kind of unceremoniously after like a 2-week relationship with a guy she thought was really hot and really promising. And he basically gives it to her and is like, hey, you're fucking stupid, and a lot of the girls around here are stupid too. Y'all are a dime a dozen, and I really have no interest in being in a long-term relationship with you. You're just fun, is really, I think, what he says. She takes this to heart. She's pretty upset by it, and I think it's starting to get her to kind of reevaluate her life, or at least the first stirrings of that are happening. And calling back to, I guess, the last part of the book, you can just really see the transformation. I really think Tessa Bailey is just so good at crafting romance. Like, she has little nuggets of wisdom throughout, and you can see the character growing throughout the story, which I appreciate. Anyway, back to what I was trying to say. We have Piper get dumped by this guy. She's reevaluating her life, but she doesn't exactly do this in what would be considered a productive or healthy way. She ends up throwing a rager at a hotel pool that she ends up breaking into, which ends up costing her a lot. She ends up going to prison for a night, and then she gets bailed out by her sister, and her stepfather is like, yo, this isn't really gonna fly anymore, unfortunately, so I'm gonna send you back to the land of your deceased father, a place you've pretty much never been since you were 4 years old, and you're gonna have to rough it there. Her sister agrees to go along with her.
The guy at the beginning of the book that dumps her.
Yes.
I think he's supposed to be an asshole. He didn't sound like that big of an asshole to me. At this point in the story, he is the most reasonable character that I have encountered. Given I've only encountered 2 people, he literally says, I don't want a real relationship with you because there's nothing real about you, which is true at this point in the story. Like, kind of an asshole way to do it, but I mean, he tries to kind of let her off easy at first, and she's like, oh, is this because I talked to my psychiatrist about our zodiac sign? I kind of respected it, you know? Like, obviously he doesn't really have anything redeeming that happens afterwards, and he just shows back up and, like, her time of fame at the end, spoiler alert, be like, hey, you want to go out again or whatever? So, like, obviously he's just as shallow as everyone else. At least he seemed to value himself to some extent. He should have been more of an asshole if they were trying to portray him as an asshole, you know?
No, I think he was appropriate in his introduction. I think he was a voice of reason while also being kind of a dick, and we also don't really know who he is and what his role is, and so it doesn't feel like it's coming from a place of he's better than her because he's a doctor and she's an influencer or whatever. We don't know what his profession is. We don't really know who this guy is, just that he's hot and he's wearing a Tom Ford suit.
They name drop so much in this first chapter. I was like, I'm gonna be sick.
Don't know why. Name dropping doesn't bother me. It depends on the context, and I feel like, to me, name dropping, when I think of name dropping, I think of like, you know, a celebrity and you're trying to use their name a lot. That's to me what a name drop is. To me, using like names of brands is just descriptive of what kind of lifestyle these people are living.
Yes, I agree, right? And I'm not trying to say that like you shouldn't, you know, say brand names to kind of denote the style of life that you're living, right? What I'm trying to say is it's more evident of like what we will get into later in the books. It's just like repetition of a certain thing, like naming a brand, that happens a little too often. There's a couple of things that are used to the point of being overused.
I actually will not disagree with that. There's something that I noticed that I have in my notes that was not the thing that Hayden remarked to me about. So I'll be interested to talk about it with him.
I can't see anything. These lights are way too bright.
Moving on. So we've got this introduction to Piper. She's sent to Westport. At this point, how are you feeling?
Still, I mean, obviously still don't like her.
Scared?
Very surprised that her sister likes her even a little bit and is willing to like go with her for basically no reason. Honestly expected her sister to have given her more shit for having to like get up at like 3 a.m. and go bail her out.
But I think that to me also indicated the kind of relationship they have, and that again, maybe there's more to Piper meets the eye. Like if her sister, she has a good relationship with her sister.
At the time in the book though, to me it made no sense, you know, because like the only thing that we've seen about Piper is like very pointedly that she's a shallow influencer that has no thought going on in her head besides like how many likes she's gonna get on her next post, you know?
Yeah, very true. I, at this point too, the first time I read it was a little bit like, I'm gonna see where this goes. And I actually, with Introduction of Hannah, was unsure if Hannah was going to be someone who was a true ally and friend to Piper, or if there was going to be some like weird sibling dynamics there, as in like Piper's gonna be a shitty sister and then that's gonna be something that like develops over the course of the story. I'm glad it didn't go that way. I loved Hannah and her inclusion. I think sister relationships are really tricky in books. I actually really appreciated Hannah and Piper's relationship. But
yeah, for sure. I think that they did a good job of giving Hannah enough of a character for you to understand who she is, but not like going deep enough where, yeah, you could get into the problems of kind of incorrectly writing a sibling relationship, you know?
Moving on to the next part of the book, we have the introduction of our hero, Brendan, who is a charmer. He's a red beanie wearing just hunk of a man, right? Brendan comes into our heroine's life in a very, like, I would say prototypical, stereotypical sort of rom-com-y way. He ends up seeing her at the bar and just being kind of shitty and snarky to her the first time he sees her, right? Like, she comes into the bar with her suitcases because she's going to be living above the bar that her father used to own. And he kind of gives her a hard time. I won't lie, I can't remember all of the details, but I do remember her finding him attractive a little bit and him definitely thinking she's hot.
They show up to the bar in the middle of a storm and are like pulling out a bunch of suitcases, and Brendan thinks that they're tourists, and I think like everyone else kind of does too. But as soon as they enter the building, all of the rest of the guys see how attractive she is. They immediately go rush to help her, except for Brendan. Brendan's still like, fuck's she doing here? They find out who they are, and they're like, you're not gonna last a single night here, but you know, go ahead, you know, you want to sleep upstairs, have fun. They show them to their rooms.
Brendan kind of spearheads the effort. Brendan's kind of the only person that we really hear from at this point, and
we do hear a sick Tale of the Ocean.
God,
I think it's
not
from
the
FAQS.
Tales of the fucking ocean. I know you're gonna go on a goddamn rampage about the goddamn sea shanties.
That was it. It was just a good story. But it was my first introduction to them, and so I told Chandler in my first day of reading that after reading this passage where I think it's FAQS is like telling, you know, some story of them like out on the boat crabbing, I could not stop like reading it in the voice of like an old like northeastern like sailor ship captain.
You gonna do it for us?
No, not yet. I'll save it. I'll save it for another time when there's a good
line.
quote.
So Brendan ends up leaving kind of on a sour note. I think there's definitely an attraction there. You can definitely tell he's the hero, etc., etc. Because he ends up coming back pretty quickly. There's more banter as kind of time goes on between Piper and Brendan. They end up meeting at the grocery store as Piper is trying to scrounge up ingredients to make a meal for Hannah for coming to Westport with her. Again, hints that Piper is maybe more kind and a better person than we maybe previously thought. She definitely has a conscience. And then we also get to see Brendan being helpful. He tries to help Piper select some ingredients at the grocery store, even though he's kind of a dick about it. And then we also have him sending someone to install foam on her bunk bed so that she doesn't hit her head every time that she wakes up in the morning.
Because she has a bruise on her forehead.
He also changes the locks, or I guess adds a lock to the apartment above, what is it, No Name?
Yeah, he adds a lock to the door of No Name as well.
Yeah, so no one can get in and, you know, be a creep. Which, you know, we love to see. It's an alpha hero move without being aggressive. It's just, like, thoughtful, which I appreciate.
Yeah.
Recurring theme in Tessa Bailey's books.
Because, like, during their conversation at the grocery store, I think he realizes that he's kind of being a dick because she says something about, like, way to represent your
city,
town. Yeah. And he's like, oh, yeah.
Yeah,
like, we
maybe
are
I
kind
should
of,
be
like,
nicer.
nice and neighborly here. Like, what am I doing?
Yeah. And again, recurring theme that keeps happening throughout the book. I think at the end of the book, too, there was a time when I was a little bit irritated with something Brendan said, and then almost immediately he goes and corrects himself internally and is like, hey, that wasn't, like, a nice thing to say, and or I need to figure out a better way to think about this. And I think I have it written in my notes, so we'll talk about it later, but just something that...
And if we don't, just know what happened.
The only other notable thing that happens around this time is that Piper ends up meeting her grandmother and kind of forms a bond with her, I guess, pretty quickly. She didn't even know that she had a grandmother in town, but through her grandmother, she gets her first connection to her father, who she knows very little about because her mom was too grief-stricken to really be able to talk about her dad with her. I don't really want to talk too much about the grandma, but just know that this is an integral part of Piper's, I guess, character development and character building. Opal comes into Piper's life, and she's really nice to this old lady, and she's also really nice to an old man, who she ends up walking with daily to... Where does he go?
The museum.
He goes to the museum daily. She walks into the museum.
To, like, sit and read or look at the sky or something like that.
Whatever old people do.
He's like, I try to get up there, I try to sit on the porch, and if I can't get up there, if no one's around to help me up there, then I just, like, hope that it's not too sunny. Also during this time, I think it's actually a little bit before she meets her grandma, Piper makes a comment to Brendan about, she sees Brendan's ring on his finger, makes a comment about, you know, like, your wife must have it super rough or something like that, and he was like, yeah, she did. She realizes that at first, they didn't particularly thought that they weren't making it obvious whether she was dead or they were just divorced, you know? But yeah, it turns out she's dead.
Yep.
Yeah. And she also finds out that one of the people that she's already met previously is Brendan's ex's father, or Brendan's like kind of father-in-law.
Mick. I think
yeah,
Mick was actually the one that was giving the story at the beginning. I don't think it was
Yeah,
FAQS.
well, Mick is also the one who tells her to go see Opal. He's just like, hey, go look up Opal, you know, here's her contact information or whatever. Doesn't tell her who she is. He doesn't realize that she doesn't know who she is. Yeah. So he's just like, go see Opal. But yeah, she realizes that that's the father of the dead lady.
Which is actually a pretty good segue, because the next thing that I have in my notes is that Piper crashes the dead wife's memorial.
Yes. Which, to be fair, I'm fairly certain that she was invited to said memorial and told it was a party. Specifically, someone says, come on down to, do you remember what it's called? The Tug and Barrel or something like that?
Blow the man down.
Come on down to blow the man down. You know, we're all getting together on Friday for a little party. And so she shows up, gets a tray of shots, goes down to like the basement where everyone is getting together for the memorial and is like, why the long faces? It's time to party. And then she takes a shot and everyone's just like,
And the good thing is, it's around this time where Brendan is starting to realize his sexy feelings towards Piper.
Mm-hmm.
He already kind of has those sexy feelings when he goes to change the lock at her apartment and notices that she is in a pair of white cotton panties. One of Hayden's favorite details of the whole story.
No, it's not one of my favorite details. The point that I made to you when I brought it up, this was like in the first night of me reading, was that there was basically there were very minimal even hints at them being attracted to one another. Obviously, you know that they're both objectively attractive, but they're never like, she's kind of sexy or he's kind of sexy. And then all of a sudden you just get like Brendan's point of view as he's like looking through the crack of their bedroom door, because he like knocks on their door like early in the morning or something like that. And he says something about those white panties on her or something like that, and I was just like, oh, okay. Given I'm still hearing this in an old sailor voice, right?
Maybe it's because I heard that note from you before I started my reread. I was noticing a fair amount of buildup before this moment. They both find each other attractive, and they both talk about it a couple of times in their head. Maybe it's not like in huge, large, like swaths of text, as they do later, but you definitely know that they're into each other. There's already been moments of proving to each other that they like each other. Changes their fucking locks. He puts the foam on the bed, or he gets someone to do that for him. I don't understand how that's like not build up. Like, you care about someone enough to do those things. It stands to reason. You might want to see their and white panties.
That actually happens earlier than, like, he's knocking on the door to tell them, hey, I changed the locks and I have someone. Then he sees the bruise on her head and says, I'll get someone over here. You know what I mean? Like, it's pretty early on in their like relationship of knowing each other.
I mean, I feel like sexual chemistry and attraction's like a pretty
I
level
agree.
thing.
I'm not saying that it's a crazy feeling to have out of the blue, right? What I'm saying is, as far as the text goes, it felt like it came out of nowhere. There was no real ramp up of like, oh, you know, she has like a nice ass or something like that. It was just straight to the white panties on the
as it should be.
Oh yeah, so we finally get the scene where Piper tries to cook dinner for Hannah using, you know, the ingredients in the recipe that Brendan recommended in the grocery store, like, you know, one of their first days meeting.
Or like spaghetti or something.
Yeah, spaghetti. Sets the pan on fire by like accidentally putting a dish rag in the flame. Runs outside with like a flaming pan. And Brendan and FAQS just happen to be across the street eating food like they always do on like Mondays or whatever it is.
Yeah, true.
So he like runs over, helps her put the fire out or whatever, and then he's like, come over here, you eat this food, I'm the captain now. While they're having their little like chat, Hannah and FAQS go to this record shop. Like, FAQS is like, yeah, there's a record shop in town, and Hannah's like, oh, count me in, and then they go. While they're gone, Piper and Brendan are having this conversation about Piper being sorry about crashing the dead wife's memorial, and he's like, nah, it's alright. Oh yeah, they have this whole conversation about how he only gets the fish and chips, and she makes him eat a whole pot pie. He like, you know, does it kind of out of spite. I think this is one of the first points where from his point of view, you can kind of see that he's starting to like her, because, you know, he's really kind of giving in to these things and like having these one-on-one conversations with her, and is like, yeah, I don't feel bad about my dead wife.
Is this the time when he asks her on the first date?
Well, what is their first date?
Shall I pull up? Oh wait, here we
Wow.
Wait,
that was
just
actually
not
impressive.
fish and chips. I was wrong.
I feel like he doesn't ask her on a date until he like builds the pergola. Oh no, wait, because they're already like
almost
shit by
fucking.
then.
Pergola is real bone worthy material.
Yeah, so like after talking to a bunch of people in town, seeing the memorial and seeing their grandma, they decide that a good way to honor their father would be to fix up the no-name bar that's like a shit stain in the town.
Not only would it be good for them reconnecting with their dad and also being a good thing in town, Piper is also doing this because she wants to get back to LA.
Yes.
This is at a point where she is not quite at a crossroads yet because she doesn't, like, she's not fully invested in this potential relationship with Brendan yet. So she's like, okay, I'd like to get to LA ASAP. That quickly changes. She definitely starts changing her tune, and or you get to see some of the seeds being planted that she might not care about LA quite as much as she previously thought. But at this point, she's like, I kind of feel like I need to go home. So maybe if I do this, I can prove to my stepfather that, like, I am responsible. I'm an adult. I can be taken seriously.
Yeah, so they're like, let's fix it up, and then we'll have like a grand opening party, and we can invite our stepdad to the party, and he'll just see like how great it is.
Yeah. And so first order of business is cleaning things up, and in starting to clean things up, we get Brendan visiting and seeing kind of the hard work that the girls are doing, and he immediately kind of like throws himself into helping them. He brings back some of his ship crewmen and is like, hey, you're gonna help me build a motherfucking pergola.
Also, there was one thing that I mentioned to you when reading this. They specifically mentioned that Hannah and Piper are like tearing up all of the floorboards, and they put all of the old floorboards in one trash bag somehow, and then they're like, I can't carry this, and I'm like, how are you fitting all of the floors into one
It's
bag?
a really small bar.
But then Brendan just slings it over his shoulder like it's nothing.
Wrong man.
Arg, let me walk these planks outside.
And this actually, too, is when we start seeing Piper's attraction towards Brendan, I think, in full force. Again, I think Hayden points this out, that Brendan definitely experiences the attraction to Piper first, and he's like, it kind of feels like things are coming out of nowhere because we don't see a lot of Piper being like, gotta fuck this man. But whenever she starts seeing him use his big, strong muscles around the bar, she's feeling it. She's feeling things, and we do have their first sexual encounter in the bar.
Is this the first
Blow
one?
this woman down, you know what I mean?
Is this the first one? I just remember it being like way out of the blue.
It was definitely in the bar that it's kind of...
I mean, I think that you're right. At the end of it, I'm pretty sure Anna like walks in
Yes.
on them.
Yeah.
Like making out and almost getting the fucking.
They're just dry humping.
But she like walks in, Piper like scrambles down, and he's like, I'm gonna be out of here, and he just dips. He doesn't even say anything. I'm pretty sure that they just say something about he like looks back at her like one last time, or like doesn't even look at her when he leaves or something like that.
He just dips.
Yeah, he's just out.
Does he, or is this the time when he asks her on the date? I feel like it's after this that he's like, we're going on a fucking date, you bitch. I guess we can pull out the text. Why am I so good at this?
I don't know. This is kind of stupid.
Pergola.
Oh, yeah, because, like, they were about to have sex, and then Brendan's like, I don't roll like that.
I don't have sex on the first date. Or at least, he basically says he doesn't want this to just be a hookup. And I don't know if he says that this is not something that he typically does, but he just really actually likes her for her personality. Surprisingly. Yeah. I can see my notes. I know what my repeat phrase is.
Is it coming?
No.
Oh, okay.
Wait. What do you mean? Is that the phrase?
No, I'm saying like...
Oh, am I going to say it soon?
Yeah, like is it about to happen?
Not about to, but it'll happen. I just happened to see the words. Okay.
Right.
Anyway, Brendan invites Piper on a date. Piper's like, ugh, but I kind of just want to fuck though. And also, I'm going back to LA. I don't know if she like straight up says at this point that she doesn't want a relationship, but she says it pretty quickly. And I do have in my notes, that's actually one of the first things in my notes is, I like that Piper is upfront about saying that she's not planning on staying in town, because I feel like that could have easily been the conflict in this story, is like Piper being dishonest about her intentions, and I think that would have made this book like a pretty, I don't say a pretty low rated book in my eyes, but to me, I really don't like dishonesty as a part of narratives. Before you fucking say Punk 57 has dishonesty, I don't give a fuck.
The whole thing is dishonesty.
I don't give a fuck, okay?
On both sides.
I contain multitudes. Moving along. I appreciate that. I like Piper. I like that we're seeing more of her personality, and that even though she's kind of an airhead or whatever, she never is, dishonest. I appreciate it. Moving on.
So are we talking about the date right now?
Let's do it.
She comes over to his place for a date. First of all, he lives like down the street, but he comes to the bar and picks her up and drives her.
Classy move.
You know, she wears some, sexy little thing. Like I don't remember if, I'm pretty sure that this is initially from his perspective.
Yeah.
The like, you know, picking her up and stuff. And he can tell from what she's wearing that she's trying to make it just about sex, to where like they don't have to be any sort of like feelings involved or, you know, have a real relationship. He's like, I'm not gonna let her.
He is here to wow her with not only champagne but fish and potatoes. So he means business.
He's like, every man in Westport knows how to
cook a fish
dinner, you know.
That's the one thing we know how to cook.
And, you know, he gets her good champagne, and even though he like doesn't drink champagne, shows her his garden, and she's like, oh my god, this man has so many layers.
You know, I didn't fully appreciate that the first time I read it, but as the purveyor of fine gardens that I am now, that shit made me moist.
I just remember, let's just go ahead and say, they bout to fuck. As upfront as I was right here, right? Like, as out of nowhere as that was, so was the sex that they had in this book. I don't even remember what they're talking about, but it is like not sexy, and she stands up and whips her out.
What's wrong with that?
No, there's nothing wrong. I was just like, oh, okay, that's what's happening here. Like, I knew that they were gonna have sex at the end of this date. I wasn't expecting it to happen how it did, but it does make sense given that, you know, she's trying to make this just about sex. It's not like there shouldn't be like a moment, you know, that they have and then they like get into it. She's just like, well, let's, you know, just have at it, big boy.
I was gonna see if my favorite phrase comes out to play in this scene. It doesn't. This is only their first scene. Do they have
intercourse? Penetrative intercourse? No, they do not. They just have a little suck and tug, you know, kind of action going on. Was that all right?
Tug the man down.
I will say, I don't know if it's definitely had to have been said in the book by this point, right? Because go back to our repetitive phrases or like things that they kind of use a little too often. I know that I've said this to you multiple times already since reading this book, but one of the things that they like to go to in this book for some reason is anytime Piper is even slightly, not even feeling aroused, she just like looks at Brendan the right way and is, damn, this man's hot. Her nip turned hard points. Herky nips. I don't know why they keep talking about her nips getting hard and swollen. I mean, like, I get it or whatever, but they do it a little too much.
You know what? I think you're right. And also, I just am hearkening back to the very beginning of this book. Piper talks about at the party the fact that everyone around her is younger than her, and she looks at a girl's boobs and is like, oh, I bet her boobs are much perkier than mine. Boobs are on the brain. Moving right along, we have at the ending of this date, essentially, Brendan being like, yo, this is super fun.
Here's your panties back.
And then he's like, I'm going off to sea for a couple weeks. Catch on the flip. He comes back.
No, it's just like one night. It's like over like a weekend or like a couple days or something like that. It's like
I think it's the big haul. He goes out and then he comes back and then it's the hospital. Between them like almost having sex and then him going out and then coming back.
Oh, no, you're right. There's
a lot of fucking storms
No.
book.
This one, there is no storm. He just goes on a fishing trip and is like, hey, you should go, like, visit the winery while I'm gone. And she goes to visit the winery.
And this is the Instagram shit.
Yeah, the Instagram shit.
I don't really care. Let's skip over this because it's kind of boring. We can get into the more exciting stuff with, you know, they have some more, like, playful banter and he follows her on Instagram, blah, blah, blah.
He follows her on Instagram and, like, off to her pictures at sea.
Seaman for the season.
He's a seaman, yeah.
Yep.
We were going to make that joke at least once. Like,
it had to happen.
There was no avoiding it. I'm surprised that you went for it before I did.
After the romance is building a little bit, we do have Brendan going to sea for 2 weeks. He's going to catch the king crabs. This is like his big haul. This is what's going to make him all of his money. And there happens to be a storm that happens. Piper is kind of like worried for him. She goes and stays at his house, like in the middle of a storm when it's raining. She's like running and she's like, I need to sleep in his bed. I miss him so much. Anyway, she does that. She gets a call that he is at the hospital.
There's been an accident.
There's been an accident. She knows him and one other guy is there. She doesn't know kind of the details. She goes, she's terrified. She finds out that Brendan is not injured. Then they go on to have some delightful, I'm so happy you're alive sex.
In the hospital.
In the hospital.
Also, I thought, like, honestly, I thought the boat sank. I thought that they were, like, rescued by the Coast Guard and there were, like, only 2 survivors.
What would be sexy about that?
He's alive. He almost died. But
he's supposed to be a
strong
strong and capable man.
I mean, I guess, but
like, who can weather the storms of the ocean.
But what is stronger about nothing happening to you and one of your friends slipped into his head? I don't really understand how that's stronger.
Because he has control of his boat and he's like good at shit. It would be a lot less sexy if he was not good at stuff. They have the first of what will be a couple of different rounds of penetrative sex, in which the phrase is used time and again. This was the phrase that really stood out to me. Hayden is really hung up on the I'm really hung up.
No, the nipple talk. No,
not today.
It was just the first time. It was just the first time that it struck me. I mean, the rest of them I was expecting. I know what kind of book this is.
But she does, after having sex with Brendan in the hospital, just really going to town on the baloney pony, goes home to Hannah and is like, I had a And while I am happy for my good sister in Christ, it just seems like strange to continue to remark upon it. It's like if it happens the first time and it keeps happening, you figure it's just like standard fare at this point. I'm saying like once it's happened once, it's no longer fresh and new and exciting in a sexual context. Like I don't care if you're having 3 or 1.
Well, I'll remember that. Then, you know, after you know, we get back to town. Oh yeah, I mean, she leaves kind of abruptly after the whole like sex situation because Brendan gets like paged by the hospital desk, and when they walk out, like Mick is there, dead wife's father. This is his father-in-law.
Yes, Brendan's. Is it next father-in-law? She's dead.
I don't know what it's
father-in-law.
Considered. Anyways, and also, I mean, the guy who gave him the boat that he is the captain of.
Yeah.
Or I guess I don't really know if he gave it to him. Does it belong to Brendan, or is he just the captain?
No, it belongs to him.
Anyways.
Not only is he captaining this ship, he's also captaining... So, Mick sees that because he's like, oh my god, your hair's fucked up. And she's also, a little bit like, ugh, I need to leave.
And also, Mick, I'm pretty sure at this point also is when he sees that Brendan is no longer wearing his wedding ring as well. He's been wearing for 7 years since his wife died of an aneurysm on the beach walking alone while he was at sea.
Damn, you really got that one out quick. That was sexy.
Yeah, do you like that?
Yeah, I like that.
But yeah, so they come back to town. Piper's planned like a night out with her grandma, because like had gone over there when she first met her grandma's hairdresser was supposed to come over, and you know, Piper's just like playing around with her hair. Oh, I haven't felt this sexy in years. She didn't say that, but you know, she feels it.
She doesn't leave the house a lot because she's still kind of suffering grief, even like how many ever years later her son died. So anyway, she ends up going out with Piper. Piper ends up getting absolutely shit-faced, and Brendan takes her home. Not in like a I'm gonna have sex with you kind of way, because he's honorable, right? He's not gonna do that.
Yeah.
But Piper is being a little bit honest at this point and like saying a lot of things on her mind, and he's like, guess what, tomorrow we're gonna have a talk. And they do. They talk, and there's also some finger popping.
Yeah, so, they go out on the boat.
They go out on the boat.
They get out on the water.
On the Delaware.
I don't know why we're saying it like that, because it's more like, they get out on the Delaware.
They're definitely not in Texas, so yeah, correct.
Yeah, anyways, she gets to see this sexy boat captain be the captain of his own ship, you know, and he puts her on his lap.
She gets to feel that rough denim on her cool, smooth skin.
Yeah, because she wore a skirt on a boat. He takes her below deck, shows her all of the quarters, the crew's quarters, and she's like, I can tell that this one's yours because
there's nothing here. It's impersonal.
Well, and also because there's not a bunk above it.
Oh yeah, there's no bunk above it, there's no
like
pictures.
It's like the furthest one from everything else. And
he's alone, he's a loner, he's kind of the captain.
She sees like some nudie calendars, and he's like, yeah, I don't have any of that. And she's like, well, do you want some private pics
he like
just
cuts
for you?
her off and is like, yeah.
And so he
gets his iPhone out and starts to click in. What kind of iPhone do you think he had? Do you think he had like a really good...
3?
Do you think this was in like portrait mode?
iPhone 3.
He's just like this big in his big mitt of a hand. And then they have some really raunchy sex. I remembered things about the sex scenes in this book, but I didn't remember where they took place, and I really don't remember her finger popping his on the boat.
It just felt weird that they didn't talk about it beforehand.
Consent's important.
You know?
You should probably talk about it.
Yeah.
So, after this, we get arguably my favorite scenes in a romance novel ever. Brendan, you know, I'm sure there's some shit that happens in between, but I don't care.
Is it the Seattle trip?
It is indeed the Seattle trip, my good friends.
Yeah, I knew that this would be your favorite.
Melton, a man who would go out of his way to book a hotel for his bimbo girlfriend, or reformed bimbo girlfriend, book a nice hotel for her to stay at, treat her to a shopping trip, and spend copious amounts of money on her, remark upon how he's like sexually attracted to spoiling her.
Yeah, I knew that this would be your favorite part. For sure. Like, I understand that this
did something for me.
I feel like this scene, or like collection of scenes here, is the reason why this is your number one. Or like one of your favorite books. Like, if this part of the story did not happen, this would be lower on your list.
Certainly, yeah. But I'm saying, like, it's not just that I want someone to do that for me. It's that it's what it stands for, right? He is saying all of the traits that other people dislike about you and find shallow, I like all of you. I like every piece of you, and I'm going to treat every piece of you with respect, with kindness, and I'm going to love every part of you, and I love that. It is kind of rare for a romance novel to really get there, which kind of sucks. I feel like that should be like the number one thing that a romance accomplishes, right? It's like to prove that these two people belong together. Not only that, but they accept everything about each other, and it's not just like, I want to bone this bitch for life. That's important, and this book accomplishes that. I love it. And yeah, obviously I want to be treated to like a really nice hotel and some like free shit.
Obviously, this is where Piper finds out that he is quite a rich man, despite his meager living.
I liked this trip too because of the confessions and because of the talks they have. I also like that we do get to see some like hints of Fox and Hannah's friendship building, which I thought was kind of cute. I don't know, do you have anything that you're feeling about the trip? I've obviously talked about how much I loved it, but...
No, I think they have some kind of little fight or something, but it was inconsequential in my opinion.
Honestly, I will say once I got to like the 70% mark of this book this time around, I didn't get bored so much as like I knew how things were going to play out, and so I kind of just like tuned out the rest.
I wouldn't really say that there's like anything crazy that happens here.
I was going to say, do you want me to just bring it home and kind of like quickly wrap up what happens at the end of the book? Or do
I was just going to say that they go back to the town, and
they go back to Westport, yeah.
Yeah, they go back to Westport, and Brendan's like, hey, why don't you move in with me?
She's like,
you and Hannah both move in.
No, she does. She does move in with him. I do remember that. And then they have some sort of little tiff. Oh, I know what it's about actually, because I read this book literally an hour ago.
Oh, I know what it's about. Oh, that's what the start of the tiff was in Seattle as well.
Piper ends up getting a call from her stepfather, and he's like, hey, when is the opening? He's kind of skeptical that the opening of the bar is going to end up happening. But she's like, no, it's happening. You should come down. Brendan overhears this and is like, wait, oh yeah, I kind of forgot that the whole reason you're doing this is because you're trying to get out of here. It kind of scares him because in addition, there's also a phone call that Piper receives from a friend that's like, hey, come back to LA, like we're gonna have a crazy party. People are excited about the idea of you coming back because you've been gone so long, and it's like, ooh, where's Piper? And so Brendan's like, wow, she's really not all in on this, even though we're living together now at this point. And they have a little bit of a fight. He ends up going to see. She's like, don't worry, I'm gonna kiss you and send you off. Obviously something happens to where she can't do that, and she ends up going to LA when the opening for a bar doesn't go exactly as she wants, but they end up making up. He comes to LA and is like, hey, I love you still, and she's like, oh my god,
pulls her off a unicorn.
I love you too. The end. So that's the book. That is what happens in the book. I do have some notes that I might read off rapid fire. Things I liked. When he says, I'm a this ass man.
Yeah.
That is romance, baby. Velvet Helmet was something that I had highlighted from the last time that I read this book. It's still something that I noticed this time around.
Velvet because it's soft? Is it velvet because of the color? What is the velvet?
It doesn't feel like velvet. It just feels like skin. I don't really understand that comparison. That is, velvet is something that is used often because that one is used in ACOTAR. Velvet wrapped steel.
I guess it is just about how soft it is, huh?
Yeah, but I wouldn't say velvet. I would say maybe like satin. That is the only sexual thing that I had. You didn't like, I tasted her mouth. Or I wanted to taste her mouth.
Yeah. Something about that. It's like, he was just talking about, like, kissing her. I just thought that was weird. Obviously, that's what happens, right? But it was just a weird thing to say.
No, I think the same thing. Definitely a thing. I remember reading Twilight and her talking about, like, the cool, like, smell of his breath. Actually, I think you might have said that whenever we read those books, but true delight upon the senses. I will say that is my one, not a complaint, but one thing that can pull me out of a story, but something I'm willing to overlook with Tessa Bailey's books is that sometimes the words she uses for smut, I think, can be a little over the top. The euphemisms and or some of the dirty talk, I think, can be cringeworthy if you're not into the story. I was into it, so I really didn't give a fuck.
Oh, I felt like there was a moment that I said really pulled me out of it, but maybe it was just the panty moment.
It was definitely the panties. Those are all the tasting notes that I have. I think the only other thing that I had written down was that I just love the fact that Brendan, in his head, kept saying that he loved her before he said it out loud. I really liked that we get to get his feelings before he verbalizes it. That, like, things that she does, he just loves, and he loves her, and he's trying to, like, keep it to himself because he's like, I don't want to scare her. I just thought it was sweet.
Oh, no, I mean, we definitely get it from her, too, but she, like, refuses to even internally say it to herself because, you know, she's afraid of having to stay and, like, what that will mean.
Yeah, absolutely.
So on and so forth.
Yeah, we read this whole book, and you read it pretty rapidly. I'm really proud of you for getting through this and or for having such delightful things to say. I think everyone really appreciated your commentary. Do you have any final notes and final things that you want to tell the people?
Just in case anyone was wondering, I can read. I tend to not read physical copies of books because, first of all, I
can't sit still.
Have squirrel brains and I can't sit still. And also, it's not only the sitting still portion, but it's the fact that reading a physical book You have to hold it in your hands, and you have to hold it still, and then look directly at it. You can't do anything else while you're
Hayden
reading
describes reading to my audience.
You just can't do anything while you're reading a physical book. Whereas like an audiobook, I can be doing other things. And so like if there's other things that I need to take care of, you know, like I can do that at the same time. This, I have to devote my full attention to receive the same content, you know? That being said, this does come with the benefit of my mind being able to give the characters voices instead of being influenced by how the narrator makes them sound, you know? Yeah. Which in this case was a delightful sea captain.
What do you think you learned from this book? I will say...
Learned? Am I supposed to be learning shit from these?
Whenever I ask you to read my favorites, I'm wondering what you take away from it. Did you learn anything new about me? Let's make this about me.
No. I learned nothing new about you.
Nothing new?
Yeah, no, all that this did, you told me that this was one of your favorites.
Yes.
I read it. I got to the Seattle scene, and then I realized that, yeah, that makes sense. That's why that's one of your favorites.
So what you learned is that you know me really well.
Yeah, but I already knew that.
You knew that you knew me well?
Yeah.
It has been nearly 12 years.
It's been a little too long. Yeah. Also, you're not a tough one, you know? Sometimes you are, but not in, like, these regards. Not in, like, why you would like this book. How this book relates to you. Not a toughie.
Buy me things and call me pretty.
Were you at all surprised by my feelings on this book? Because I think I remember from Punk 57, you were quite surprised with my feelings about the book. I guess, like, how problematic I thought it was, and, like...
I'm not surprised. I guess I feel like your response to this book was more tepid than I had anticipated. Not in necessarily a terrible way. I was just wondering, if you were going to come out of left field with some sort of like commentary that I wasn't expecting, or if you were going to like really hate this book and me just be completely surprised. Also not surprised that you didn't hate it, because again, this definitely is like, it's less problematic certainly than Punk 57, and it's a typical rom-com.
I mean, I think that she and I hope no one gets offended by this, right? But, like, I think Tessa Bailey, from this book at least, I thought that she was a better author, or at least an author that was more in line with, like, literally, like, the syntax and, like, the vocabulary and stuff that I would prefer to read. It felt a little less juvenile than some of the other books that we've read.
It wasn't melodramatic.
It wasn't melodramatic, where I was like, are you kidding me? The only melodramatic scene was, like, the whole, you know, I'll meet you at the docks, and, like, if I don't meet you, then I've made my decision, I'm going back to LA, and then the old man slips and falls so she can't meet him at the docks kind of thing. Like, I knew that was going to happen.
Predictable,
I was
but not,
you
like,
kidding me?
Too melodramatic.
Yeah, that being said, it was overall just, like I said, a more realistic kind of, like you said, it's rom-com. Yeah, with a realism aspect that didn't pull me out of the story. I felt a little more engaged with it. That being said, I think the reason that you think I'm more tepid on it, I mean, I technically am.
Yeah.
Because it was a better book, so there were less things for me to say. I think the moral of the story for you is the worse the book is, the more...
better the dbbc.
Yeah.
Which does lead me to my next, I guess, closer here. I don't know what we're going to be reading for the next Dumb Bitch Book Club. It seems like every time we do one of these, I've got another book in my head that is kind of stewing for us to read. And now I'm kind of at a loss. I don't necessarily want to put him through Birthday Girl. I don't think he'll enjoy it. Another Penelope Douglas book. She wrote Punk 57.
Oh, okay.
I don't know that he would love the age gap element, so probably not that one.
How big is the age gap?
I don't remember. Yeah, she's in college anyway. We all know, if you watch my channel, you've read Birthday Girl. Maybe you've heard of it? I don't know. But yeah, I'm unsure. I'm kind of toying with the idea of reading one of my like most anticipated romances with Hayden, and we can both see how we feel about it. Or maybe like a really popular one that you put in the comments. I'll figure it out. I'll poll y'all on Instagram. Or maybe the time I make another one of these, I'll ask my Patreon. Don't have one yet, but I will by the time that happens. So anyway.
Give me something bad, but not hard to read.
It's like a coloring book. But anyway, I'll figure it out. I'll let y'all know. And maybe we won't have a 6-month gap between this one and the next one, but knowing him, who knows? Thanks so much for watching, and until next time.